Hey guys, my name is Mike Carleo, and this is my first installment of my Arpeggios series. Now this series is going to encompass all different types of arpeggios, whether it is just triads, whether it's major, minor, diminished, or augmented, and then when we move to more advanced arpeggios, which are the seventh arpeggios, which is a bunch of them. So the most important thing that I'm going to try to gather from this series is that these are the most important notes in which we can hit with our melodic phrases when we're soloing. So these are kind of like the highlighted notes out of all the scales that we play, and these are the ones that sound the best. Before we get started, I want to make a little note that the way I approach teaching arpeggios is that I break them up into 7 different fingerings. The most important thing is to remember is that there are multiple ways in which we can play each part of the triad. Now we have to remember that a triad has a root, which is the 1, a third, and the 5th. So we're going to have 3 different fingerings on the root, we're going to have 2 different fingerings on the third, and then we're going to have 2 different fingerings on the 5th. So let's get started with the root. We're going to be doing our major arpeggios in G major. Now, one thing to note is that all these fingerings can be used in multiple keys, in any key on the guitar. So that's a really, really cool thing. So we're going to be playing our root G, and then our third B, and then our 5th D. And all we're going to be doing is just repeating all of these notes up the octave until we get to the little E string and then come back down. Okay, so we're going to start on the 3rd position, and we're going to play our root with our 2nd finger, G, on the 3rd fret of the big E string. Then we're going to move to the A string on the 2nd fret to play our B. That's used with our 1st finger. Then we'll move to the 5th fret of the A string, which is our D, with our 4th finger. Now, a big technique that's going to come for all of these arpeggios is the rolling technique. So the next thing that we're going to play is the 5th fret of the D string, which is our G, and we're going to roll our pinky flat right there. And then our next note is going to be B, which is going to be the 4th fret of the G string with our 3rd finger. Then our 2nd finger is going to play the 3rd fret of the B string, which is our D. And then we're going to roll again with our 2nd finger to G on the little E string. So going up the arpeggio. Now when you roll it backwards, you're just going to go right back to where we were when we have our arched knuckles. Flat, then roll back up, and then down. So you have to kind of get a good sense of how to start rolling and where to put your fingers when you know that you're going to roll, especially when you're doing arpeggios. And one thing to make sure that you're not doing is that you want to make each note separate from each other. You don't want each note to bleed into each other when you're rolling. So you don't want this. Okay, that's what we don't want. We want just separate notes. So practice really, really slowly, and you'll be able to get that type of technique. That's very, very important. So that is the root, the 1st fingering for the root. Okay, so now let's move to the 2nd fingering for the root. We're going to place our 1st finger now on the 3rd fret for G, and then we're going to play the 3rd on the same string on the 7th fret with our 4th finger, which is our B. Then we'll take our 3rd finger, and we're going to play the 5th fret of the A string, and then we're going to go flat again with our 3rd finger to play the 5th fret of the D string, which is our G. 2nd finger is going to play the 4th fret of the G string, which is B, and then our 1st finger on D of the B string. Then we're going to roll our 1st finger to the top string on G, and then hit that 3rd above on the 7th fret, which is our B. So we have G, B, D, roll, G, B, D, roll, G, B. Then backwards, G, D, B, G, D, B, G. Okay? So this one has a lot of stretching in it. You're going to be stretching from the 3rd to the 7th fret. This also has rolling with your 3rd finger and also your 1st finger this time. So the last one we had rolling with our 4th finger and our 2nd finger. Now this time our 3rd and our 1st. So that's the 2nd fingering for our root. Now the 3rd fingering that I use for the root, I usually use at the end of the arpeggio because you can use it really good at the top of the fret, but I'm going to show you both places in which we can do it. We're going to start with our third finger on the G on the third fret again, and we're going to play a lot of the open strings right now, but it's really, really useful when you also play up here as well on the 15th position, yes, 15th position. So here we go. So we're going to use our third finger on G, second finger on B on the A string, open string D, open string G, then we'll use our third finger on the fourth fret of the the G string playing B, then D on the B string, and then roll with our second finger on G again. So one more time. Now backwards. So now you can start seeing where these G chords come from. So these open chords are pretty much the arpeggios, and you can start seeing where now these fingerings of our open chords come from. Now let's play it in the 15th position, which allows us to make each note separate really easily. So we're going to use our fourth finger for this one on the 15th fret. So we have G, then B, then D, then roll with our first finger, then fourth finger B on the 16th fret of the G string, third finger on D on the B string, and then roll back up to the G. Backwards. Okay, and that is the third and final fingering for our root. So now let's move to the third, which starts on B, and we have two fingerings for this arpeggio. So our third finger is going to start on the 7th fret of the big E string. And then we're going to move to the 5th fret of the A string and the D string to play our D and our G. So we're going to play rolled, and then roll down flat for our G. Then we're going to reach to the 9th fret for our B on the D string. Then we're going to play the 7th fret of the G string with our third finger for our D. Then our fourth finger is going to play the 8th fret of the B string for our G. And then finally our B on top of the first string with our third finger, which is the B. So we have B, and then we're going to go backwards. G, D, B, G, D, and B again. So one thing to note again, you're flat here on the G, roll back up to the D, and then the third finger on the big E string. So here is the first fingering of the arpeggio that starts on the third. And that's it. Now let's move to the second fingering. So here's the second fingering. So we're going to start on the 7th fret again, but now we're going to use our first finger. And if you're noticing, all of the new fingerings are getting higher in voicing. Okay, so we're going to start with our first finger on B on the 7th fret of the big E string. Use our fourth finger on the 10th fret to play our D. Then we're going to roll flat with our pinky to the 10th fret of the A string, which is our G. Third finger, 9th fret of the D string, playing our B. Then 7th fret of the G string, which plays our D. Second finger on the B string, which plays our G on the 8th fret. Then first finger on top, which is the 7th fret of the little E string, and then finally our top D on the 10th fret of the first string with our fourth finger. Now backwards, B, G, D, B, flat with our pinky on the 10th fret, which is our G, roll back down to our D, and then B. So now here's the second fingering in its entirety. Alright, now let's move to the 5th. So there's two fingerings, like I said before, for the 5th. And our first one, we're going to start with our second finger on the 10th fret of D of the big E string. Then we're going to move to G, which we're going to roll down with our second finger to the A string on the 10th fret, Then we're going to play B on the 9th fret of the D string, then D on the 12th fret of the D string. Then we're going to roll flat with the pinky on the G string, and then we're going to roll again to play the B on the 12th fret of the B string, and then D on the top string of the 10th fret with our second finger. Then backwards, flat, B, then G, then D, then B again, then G, and then roll back up for D. So I just want to revisit that that 3-string roll with our pinky. So this one is extremely hard to get each string and each note to sound completely detached from each other without trying to make them muddy. So it's really hard because that's where our bar chords come from. So really practice slowly with this one. So this one is a 3-string bar. Sorry, not bar, roll. So we have in its entirety: D, G, B, D, G, B, then D again, backwards. Now, when you're catching this roll, you really want to hit with the bottom base of your pinky finger. Then you can roll to the middle and then back up to your fingertip where you usually play all your notes. So you have to really get a good feeling for going forwards and backwards because they're completely different directions, and it's going to be very difficult at first. But once you get it, you'll have the feeling forever. All right, so that's the first fingering. Okay, so now the second fingering is going to start again with our first finger on the 10th fret of the big E string. Then we're going to roll with our first finger to G, and then we're going to play the third with our pinky on the 14th fret. Then we're going to play our third finger really arched on D. We're going to do this 3-string roll again. Then G, then B, then D on the top string on the 10th fret, and then we're going to reach for an extra note, 15th fret with our pinky. Back down to D, our B on the 12th fret, then G, then D, then our B on the 14th fret of the A, our root, our G on the 10th fret of the A, and then roll back up to the D. So here is the second fingering of the 5th, starting on D in its entirety. Okay, so the same thing applies to the first fingering, except now we're going to be doing this roll with our third finger. So you have to catch it with the bottom when you're going backwards, then the middle, then the top. When you're going forwards, top, middle, and then bottom. All right, so that is the final fingering for the starting on the 5th. So learning all 7 fingerings for the major triad arpeggios can be very important for us when we play over a major song or a major blues. On top of all the scales that we know, these 3 notes are the strongest notes within the chord because they actually are the chord, except in just single note form. Now, learning these arpeggios can be very important for us not only to play on the root, but also the 3rd and the 5th. And this helps us expand our ratio in which we can use the fretboard, and then we can use all different types of voicings. So this can really help us when it comes to our vocabulary and soloing. So if you'd like to get to learn about me more, you can check me out at my website below, michaelcarleo.com, for more information. Thanks for checking out this installment. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.